H-Town, hold it down. Welcome into Texans Today. I am Will Scott, talking about an interesting rumor on today's show. But first, be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications if you haven't already, because if you have your notifications turned on, you are going to get an alert every single time we put out a video. It's the best way to stay in the loop with Houston Texans. So subscribe and turn on that notification bell below so you can have your notifications turned on and, again, get an alert on your phone whenever we put out a video. Today's video, could the Texans bring Nuk Home? DeAndre Hopkins has been in trade rumors all offseason. Should Nick Caserio and the Texans inquire? I think so. I'll get into more of my thoughts later on in today's show. But the Texans, of course, traded Hopkins to Arizona in 2020. The worst trade of all time. Second all-time in Texans receiving yards, only behind the GOAT, Andre Johnson. He is expected to get dealt before the start of this season. And there's been a lot of teams linked, and some of those teams drafted wide receivers, or maybe your team like the Ravens and went out and got OBJ, and some teams maybe that were in talks or no longer in talks. Maybe the Texans could be a team that enter the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes. Now, do you want to trade for DeAndre Hopkins? Type T for trade or type P for pass down in the comment section. It is the pinned comment, so reply to it when you get a second. So D-Hop has actually been hanging out in Houston this offseason. He was on, I think he was at Buffalo Bayou Park a few weeks ago, and there's been some videos, some photos of him in the Houston area this offseason, and that's not a surprise. He called Houston home for so long. I'm sure he still visits Houston all the time, but you got to know that he might be at least a little bit intrigued at the thought of coming back to Houston, a city that he loves very much, and he obviously spent a lot of time in. Taking a look at the Texans wide receiver depth chart, and you have to look at this if you want to ask the question, does a DeAndre Hopkins trade make sense for the Texans? Because this wide receiver room is pretty solid. Nico Collins, I think, is going to have a breakout year. He had a good year last year. I think he's going to be even better. You signed Robert Woods in for agency. John Mechie III, who was battling cancer last year, he is going to be back making his NFL debut, hopefully sooner rather than later here. Noah Brown, Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, you brought them all in. Tank Dell, you drafted him. Xavier Hutchinson in the draft, and Noah Brown for agency. So you do have pretty good wide receivers in that room right now. But by trading for DeAndre Hopkins, you could acquire a clear number one wide receiver and have a veteran come in to help mentor some of these younger wideouts. And the more weapons for C.J. Stroud, the better. You cannot have enough wide receivers when you're talking about a rookie quarterback. The more help that C.J. Stroud has, the better in terms of his development, his transition to the National Football League. And it's probably not going to take much to pull off this trade for DeAndre Hopkins. I think you could acquire him for a fourth-round pick. And would he be worth that? Absolutely, he would be worth that. I'm still not over this trade that you made 3 years ago. I think we can all remember where we were when the Texans really sent in one of the worst trades in NFL history, thanks Bill O'Brien. You got David Johnson, who we all knew was kind of washed when you made that trade. You got a second-round pick, and this was right before, I believe, the Vikings got a first-round pick for Stephon Diggs, and Stephon was just not on D-Hop's level at the time. And you got a fourth-round pick. You acquired, you gave up, I should say, DeAndre Hopkins in a fourth-round pick. This remains one of the worst trades in NFL history. This was a mistake made by Bill O'Brien, letting DeAndre Hopkins walk. I don't think D-Hop wanted to leave. He never requested a trade. Bill O'Brien just didn't view him as a locker room fit and trade him when he was in his prime. And I would love the Texans to undo this mistake, bring him back to Houston, let him finish his career in the place he started his Hall of Fame caliber career. Bring him back to H-Town. I do consider the Texans a possible destination here. Other teams linked include the Buffalo Bills, the New York Giants, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Patriots. However, when you're talking about the Patriots as a possible destination, I just don't see that being a possibility because Bill O'Brien, who traded D-Hop, is now the offensive coordinator in New England. So I do not see that happening. But the Texans haven't been linked a lot, but they do make some sense, I believe, when you consider the history with DeAndre Hopkins and Houston. 7 seasons in H-Town. Over 100 games played, 632 receptions, over 8,600 yards, 54 touchdowns. He was the best receiver in the league, in my opinion, for a little while there when he was in his prime in Houston. The former first-round pick out of Clemson. What a draft pick that was by Rick Smith. And he had a phenomenal run in Houston, and it would be awesome if he could finish his career in the place it all started, in the 7-1-3. I think it would be great for the city to bring this guy back. And we've talked about the moves that have kind of brought the fan base back, right? Kind of re-energized this fan base in Houston, starting with the hire of DeMeco Ryans to be the head coach. And then what you pulled off on draft night, it was straight out of a movie. You get C.J. Stroud at 2, you trade up, get the 3rd pick, and take Will Anderson, 2 franchise cornerstones that you got within 10 minutes of each other. So we've talked about the moves that have certainly been good for this franchise, have been good for the fan base. It would be great for the city of Houston if you brought DeAndre Hopkins back. It would energize the fan base even more. I think this fan base is really excited for the first time in a long time about the direction that this franchise is going. It would be phenomenal for the city of Houston and for the Texans organization if you brought DeAndre Hopkins back to the 7-1-3. If you want D-Hop back, type Nuk down in the comments section. Spam it down in the comments if you want DeAndre Hopkins back in Houston. Now, do I think it's realistic? Probably not. In fact, I think it might be even more likely that he stays in Arizona at this point because there's not been a trade that has happened. You've seen some teams linked that have kind of filled that need at wide receiver. But does it make sense for the Texans? Absolutely. The familiarity you have with him, a number 1 wide receiver, a clear number 1 wide receiver with his experience would be phenomenal for the young quarterback, C.J. Stroud, and it's probably not going to take much to pull off that trade. And I'll say this about Nick Caserio, man. Who saw that coming on draft night? This guy has pulled off some crazy moves in his tenure. Who saw the Texans going out and getting Dalton Schultz and Devin Singletary? So don't count out Nick Caserio when it comes to a move that could stun the National Football League. Like I said, I think it'd be awesome for the city and for the organization if they could find a way to bring Nuk back to Houston. Now let's talk about this article from ESPN outlining some of the best draft fits. And one of those players they mentioned, picks they mentioned, Will Anderson Jr. to Houston at number 3 overall. Here's what they said. Anderson's pass rushing traits will be maximized in DeMeco Ryans' defense. With loaded fronts and 5-man services, Ryans can scheme one-on-one rushes for Anderson to use his first step quickness and power against offensive tackles. And Anderson can also be set up well on the Texans' twist and stunts, creating open daylight for the Alabama star to get home with his high-level short area speed. Anderson logged 34.5 sacks and 184 pressures during his 3 years in Nick Saban's defense, and Ryan's system is an ideal fit to create NFL pass rush production. I think Will Anderson is going to be awesome in Houston. I think he is going to win NFL Rookie of the Year going away. Yeah, I just said that. I think he's going to be that good in his first year. And in years to come in Houston, I think it's a fantastic fit, like ESPN just said. And he joins this Texans defensive line where he is going to be the star on this defensive line and be the star right away. 34.5 sacks in his career at Alabama, 58.5 tackles for loss, over 200 tackles. He was the best player on the field at all times in the SEC, which is certainly saying something. Like I said, I think he's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Taking a look at the odds here, you have him as really the strong favorite. Tyree Wilson is next behind him at plus 800. Anderson, the favorite, at plus 350. Jalen Carter at plus 800. Devin Witherspoon at plus 900. Christian Gonzalez at plus 1,000. So even though he's the heavy favorite, I still like the value there with Will Anderson winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. Will he win Defensive Rookie of the Year? Y for yes, N for no, down in the comments section. Let me know what you think. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're always going to have you covered with Houston Texans news and rumors.